In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, WAOK and the Mental Space presents the series, The Mind Matters, with Dr. Adrienne. This series will delve into the evolving landscape of mental health, focusing on how individuals and communities can navigate the challenges and find support in uncertain times.
Welcome to Mind Matters with Dr. Adrienne. In today's episode, Grieving Loss, a personal journey for healing, we'll delve into a complicated conversation about grief and loss, and I am joined by two wonderful experts in their fields. Mamie Jones to my left, who is a licensed professional counselor, Dr. Kai Ayanta Burks to my right, who is a public health educator. And so join us as we get into this conversation about a topic that is very difficult for many. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you for inviting me.
All
Glad
right.
to be here.
Yeah. So tell the people a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I'm Mamie Jones. I am a licensed professional counselor with a marriage and family therapy background. I've been a therapist for about 15 years. I have a full-time job. I work at Grady in the ER, and I do psychiatric evaluations for people who are in mental health crisis, and I assist in training Emory psychiatrists. I also have a small private practice where I see 3 clients a day, and I've written a couple of books.
Okay.
They're on pet loss. This is adult Paw Pal. It's a Paw Pal journal. It's a prompt type journal, walking people through their grief when they lose their pets.
Okay.
And then I have one for children, which is called The Little Paw Pal, it's a coloring book, and it talks about the stages of grief and how the parents can help their children walk through what they're feeling.
Okay.
So this is a really good tool for parents to have when they're dealing with grief
Okay.
with the loss of a pet.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. All right, Dr. Kai.
I'm Dr. Kai Ayanta. I am the soul of public health. I'm a public health educator. I help the people in the community learn about their health so they can live longer lives. That's me.
That's you.
In a nutshell.
That's you
Yeah.
in a nutshell. So in order to craft this conversation, I have developed some questions. And so the first question that I want to ask you both to answer is, can you share your personal journey with grief and loss? And so we'll start with you, Mamie.
Okay, both my parents are deceased. I have an older sister that's deceased and 2 older brothers. And of course, friends and whatnot. My dad, he was 94 when he passed away. But when my mother passed away, they had been married 53 years, but he told us that, you have to keep living.
Yeah.
And just because, you honor your loved one, but if you stay at home, do nothing, that's all you're going to perseverate on is the loss and pain, and you're not doing anything.
Right.
So I just remember we buried my mother on a Saturday. I was back in Atlanta on Sunday, going back to work on Monday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's quick.
Yeah, I mean, it helped. So I was able to I think, talk about it. And when I was able to talk about it, it made it more real.
Was your mom sick before she passed?
She was sick for a while, and I would drive to from Alabama, drive to Alabama every weekend to relieve. I've come from a large family. I have 13 siblings.
Wow.
I have an identical twin.
Yeah, I know that.
You know that. Okay, so we would go down and relieve my siblings that are down there and stay in the hospital with my mother. And not funny thing, but the thing that happened, I had a brother that died on the 28th of June, and my mother died. My mother was in the hospital. He was on his way down to see her in the hospital, but she went into some kind of critical condition while we were at the funeral for my brother.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a lot, but I think having that foundation that my dad told us that you can't stop.
Yeah.
You got to keep moving because it's not going to do anything. It's going to happen to everybody.
It's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah.
That's what my dad always says. When that train pull up for you, there's nothing you can do when your ticket has been punched but get on the train.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
So
perspective.
Yeah, so that piece, and I want to talk also about pet loss because
Okay, well, we're going to get to it.
okay,
We're going to come back to it.
because
Yeah.
it comes together like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
just the fact that there are more pets in household than children nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Kai.
Could you repeat the question for me?
So the question is, can you share a personal story about your journey with grief and loss?
Well, my father passed. It's probably been about 2 years, and I thought that I would be okay because I'm out here. I talk to the people,
Yeah.
right? And I thought, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
So and it was like he died of lung cancer, and he was told probably around March that he had lung cancer. And so we thought it was going to be a while because, doctors like, well, we don't know. But my dad had in his head that he had lived his life. He was about 87.
Yeah.
And that he was okay with whatever happened.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if he's okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But he died and I was not okay. And that was hard for me to just even grasp with the thought, just even talking about it, sitting here talking about like, oh, you're not okay. And just after going months with found myself in my room, not wanting to leave. And when I left, I could feel a little anxiety, like, Daddy, you died. Like, you really died. Like, you died here, I can't call you. I bought him an iPhone, and he was 87, but I bought it probably 5 years earlier, and he and I would FaceTime each other. And I would just sit the phone on the desk and just talk to him. And most time I'll be working, and I will only stop when he would like look down the street and be like, girl, who is that coming down the street, right? So I would just do that so I could see him.
Yeah.
So I thought that I would be okay because he and I talked all the time. I talked to the doctors on his behalf. He was in Mississippi. But he died and I wasn't okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I just had to get help because I wasn't okay.
Yeah. And the thing about grief and loss, and I say it's a complicated conversation and it's a personal journey for everybody. That's why I say it's a personal journey towards healing. So this past Sunday for Mother's Day, I was at home in Tuskegee and sitting outside with my father. He was, grilling, and we just sitting out by the pool. Nobody else was around us. And he starts talking about who has passed. And he started talking about, his grandmother and his grandfather and just talking about all these different, and you remember when so-and-so, and so I was like, okay, hold up. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
What's up with this conversation right
Yeah.
now? And so I feel like my father has been trying to prepare me for his death since I was 26 years old, because
Wow.
I am a daddy's girl. Love my mama, that's my girl. But I'm a daddy's girl. And so when I was 26, his dad died on his mom's birthday, was buried 5 days later on my birthday. Everybody forgot it was my birthday. And so at the funeral, preachers talking about how my grandfather was a community man, planted his seeds throughout the community. And he loved the community. And so we all knew what he meant. My grandfather had a lot of outside children. And so the conversation, the eulogy turned to how great my grandmother was. And so I remember leaving there thinking, I don't ever want anybody to have to struggle to say good things about me as a person. That was my first lesson. But then my father went to his safe and he pulled out his will. And I said, hold up, what you doing?
This was
And
all
he
last
said,
weekend.
No. This was when I turned 26.
Okay.
I'm getting to last weekend. And so he pulled out his will, and I said, I'm not ready for that. We had literally just come from his father's funeral. And he said, let me tell you something. He said, everybody's going to die. I can't tell y'all what he said because he has a very colorful language. But he said, there ain't been a person around yet that's been able to stop and not get on that train when your ticket is punched. He said, so it's not about what happens in death, it's what happens in life.
Exactly.
It's about how you live your life. It's about how you treat people. It's about being intentional. And so those were the lessons that came out of that experience. And so I think that I've tried, and that was 31 years ago.
Wow.
So I think that what I've tried to do is to make sure that every single day, and whoever it is that I encounter, that I am being very intentional about those relationships. But when it comes to grief, we miss people in the physical. We do. I think that you carry them with you, depending on how you've been raised, what you've been taught and told, like all of that. And so I believe that our ancestors are still here with us. I believe they watch over us. But what we want is what we want, which is we want our people in the physical. That's what we want.
Correct.
So when he started this conversation on Sunday, and he was like, I can't believe I'm 81 years old. I'm getting ready to be 81 years old. I've had a good life, like your dad.
Wow.
I've had a good life. And I was like, okay, hold up. Sir, you act like you about to go somewhere. You might live another 81. He said, well, I might, but I don't want to. He said, because if I live 81, ain't none of y'all going to be around here to be here with me. You know, and so, but there is something to when a person has peace about who they've been and how they've contributed and the life that they have lived. And so I think that as we talk about grief and loss, I know, and Mamie, you experience this as a therapist as well, so many people that get stuck.
Oh, yeah.
And they're struggling. And I think a part of it is guilt. Sometimes I deal with a lot of clients who feel guilty about not having been intentional, not having shown up in people's lives a certain way, not having had, you know, what they would classify as a good relationship, because they don't understand that you can only be responsible for your 50% of the relationship. Sometimes people are difficult, you know, and so it would be a whole lot easier if the people that were dying were folk we didn't like, because then we could just kind of listen. It would be easier. But when it's people that you love and care about, it is very, very difficult. So talk a little bit about what your experience has been in terms of dealing with clients who feel guilty about people who have passed on.
Well, I think it's, you know, from the outside looking in, it looks almost selfish, for lack of a better term, you know, on their behalf, because they're not willing to allow, to me, the natural process of life to take place. Like you don't have control to keep this person here longer than he's supposed to be. You know, you're trying to supersede what God has put out here to happen.
Well, you know, it's folk out there who don't necessarily believe in God.
Well,
so,
whatever, the God, the universe, whatever it is you believe in.
Yeah.
But you're trying to, you know, have power over that and be in control of that. And like selfishness to me, you know, when you are, and it's selfish to the loved ones that are left here, that they need you to be present. Yeah. To be, you know, not stuck in your room for days at a time and not being a part of life and not continuing to live. Yeah. You know, they can't help it because they don't know better how to do it. And so that is my role, is to try to teach them that there is life. You can celebrate your loved ones.
Absolutely.
You know, but every day, like what can you do to celebrate them? How can you show them that what you taught me, what you walk with me on through this earth, I can still live on with those lessons that we learned together or that you taught me, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know.
She made that sound so easy.
Yeah, she does. Right. I mean.
That sounded so easy.
You know.
I can say it, but I said it's easy to say, but it's hard to do.
It's hard to
absolutely.
Like Dr. Berry said, you have to be intentional about
we're going to scratch
that.
Dr. Berry part. Dr. Adrienne.
Dr. Adrienne.
Listen, we don't use
I'm sorry,
that.
Dr.
You know, that's a cuss word in my life.
sorry.
That is a cuss word for those of y'all who don't know.
Dr.
Yes, that is my
Adrienne.
ex-husband's last name. So, and I didn't grieve that thing at all, even though we were together 29.5 years, because some people do grieve when they get divorced.
Absolutely.
I did not. I celebrated. It was time.
Absolutely.
It was time. So.
But yeah, it's not easy.
No.
I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it has to be done.
Yeah.
You have to be intentional about doing it. Once you know that, look, this is really not how my loved one will want me to function, how am I going to pull myself out of this rabbit hole?
Yeah.
You know.
So with your dad, what was the time frame between when he was diagnosed with the lung cancer until he actually transitioned?
3 months.
3 months. Yeah.
So, because I had to get therapists, my therapy told me to don't get caught up and remember the day, remember the time. So I literally forgot, like, when he passed. I was asking my daughter, and she was like, it was Father's Day. I said, it most certainly was. It was Father's Day. So,
but I remember that.
yeah. And so I did, it was a 3 month 3 months. And my dad and I would joke all the time. Like, I literally get my sense of humor from my dad's side. My mom and my dad were a lot alike, right? And so my dad would always say that when your number comes up, it's your time,
It's your
right?
time.
But we would always say, if one of his friends would pass, we would say, Dad would say, well, I don't have a number anymore. I have Roman numerals. And God don't know Roman numerals, so I'm going to live a long time.
Right.
When somebody would die as he was getting older, he would start to say, well, honey, I don't know my number. I say, oh, but you don't have a number. You got Roman numerals. Like, what are you talking about? So when it came to that time, it was kind of like, well, Daddy, did God found some Roman numerals? Because I thought you said, he told me, I guess he did, because I'm thinking he around my time. And we even joked about all of that. So it was like a 3-month time, and I think that he was just kind of ready in his mind, and he kind of just had given up, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it feels that way.
Yeah, and I think that for me, it was like, well, if he's accepting this, then you have to accept it, what I thought, right? But because we had such a good relationship, we were close, we talked about death, we talked about cremation, we talked about all of those things. I just, and I know I keep saying, and it sounds redundant, but I really thought that I was okay. And was going to be okay, right? I thought I was going to hold everybody else together, right? And everything that we thought would happen, happened. But what we didn't know would happen was I would not be okay, because he thought that I would be okay. He thought I would hold everybody together, make sure everybody was okay, because that's who I was.
Which is a heavy responsibility when you have that, when somebody places that thing on you. My grandmother did that to me and said, you're going to have to be the glue in the family. And I was like, me? Why me? I'm not the oldest
Right now,
grandchild.
I'm not like you, Dr. Adrienne, because listen, my grandmother did the same exact thing.
I was like, what,
you got to hold it together.
I said, why me? And so I was the person that was responsible for writing her eulogy, pulling the clothes together. And at the time, I had, how many babies did I have? I had 3. I had 3 little kids. And I was kind of feeling like, okay, well, what's up with everybody else? And then you got to deal with the family drama. And you had 13 siblings, so I know everybody ain't always liking each other every day, because that's human nature. That just doesn't happen. I don't care how close knit you are. And so I was dealing with all kinds of stuff, and who told her, and who what, and I felt like, what, anybody else that want to step up and raise their hand can come on, but this has to get done. And then we got through everything, got to the grave site, to the cemetery, and as they were lowering my grandmama's casket into the ground, I had a total meltdown, which is where most people find closure, because it's final, but I had not had an opportunity to cry. And so because of that, they had to pick me up off the ground, And so this grieving thing is so personal, but we don't just grieve in death either. And so, before we finish this conversation, I want Dr. Kai to talk about some of the physical implications that can happen to the body as a result of this grieving process. But we grieve all sorts of things. We grieve friendships that are lost. We grieve jobs that are lost. We grieve, houses that are lost. I mean, you can literally grieve anything. And so we have to learn how to maneuver these stages of grief, because when you get stuck is when you start to lose the value for life. And it's when you're falling into a depression, and it's all of those things, because you don't feel hopeful and like you can continue to go on and to continue to thrive and live. And so one of the things that you said earlier, Mamie, was about pets. And so I am a pet lover. Dr. Kai is not. She does not like a dog, and
nor cats, to be fair.
Look, them evil. You ain't discriminating. You don't like none of them four-legged animals.
Wait a minute, do we need to have conversations with you?
No,
perhaps I need grief for that.
She just don't. She ain't an animal lover, and it's all right. But I've always had animals my entire life, because I was an only child. So my parents allowed me to have pets. And so I remember that my favorite dog, still my favorite dog, and I've had lots of them, was this Casey. He was a toy poodle, could fit in your hand. And so I had Casey.
He was a toy poodle?
He was a toy poodle. He was white. He looked like a little ball, just a little ball of cotton. And everybody loved him. And Casey actually died on Christmas Day. I didn't even open gifts that year.
I thought you said it was a toy poodle.
It was a toy poodle.
Not a toy.
Oh.
Not
it's
a,
a
that's the type of dog, Dr. Kai. It's a
remember,
toy. That's right.
I'm a non.
Listen, you thought I was talking about a toy. No, this was a living dog who
okay,
was, his breed was a toy. He was a toy poodle. And so, he died on Christmas. And, Christmas was always huge around our house. And I didn't want to open gifts. Like, I didn't care about anything. It was just, my dog was gone. And for me, especially as an only child, that was my companionship. And so a lot of times when people are grieving their pets, people who don't have pets or don't care for pets, they don't really get it. They're like, okay, it was a dog, it was a cat. But for some people, pets really are like their family.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. And there's a training that I do called Disenfranchised Grief, which specifically focuses on pet life loss. But disenfranchised grief is grief that's not validated by the public, like not honored. Like if you had somebody who was a drunk driver and got killed in a car accident, that person still was somebody's loved one, but people, society would be saying, why are you grieving him because he killed somebody? Or just say you lost a house. You losing the place, the community that you used to live in. Jobs that, I had somebody who came to Grady once who, let me move past that one. But people lose things and jobs, houses.
People who experience tragic events, weather-related events, and it wipes out an entire community. That is devastating.
It's disenfranchised grief because the society is not saying that you shouldn't be grieving about this. You should go get another job or go buy another house or, go get married again or something like that and not realizing, or stillborn, just have another baby. All those things that people are not acknowledging that their feelings are valid. But pet loss, like you said, that you create a whole life around your pet. You come home, you got to be home at a certain time, you got a feeding schedule, you got exercise going on.
Yeah, I'm not that dog, mama.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Here's why I help pets.
what's a $58 billion industry?
I got one child. Here's why I help pets. She in college.
Yeah.
So.
So it's difficult for people to accept that, I had to put a pet down. And it was, I had to call my dad. I used to call my dad every morning when I work overnight. I used to call him every morning. And I had to put my dog down. My son called me. He was home from school. And he's like, he called me at work, 2 o'clock in the morning. Lightning won't get up. I was like, what do you mean you won't get up? I just left the house. So I rushed home from work at 2 o'clock in the morning. He's sitting on the floor wagging his tail. He couldn't walk. So I carried him to the vet, and like 2 days later, I just couldn't see him not function. So I had to make the decision to put him down, and it was like my whole world just crashed.
Yeah. Well, I think that death is that way.
Yeah.
When it's, and a lot of times I hear people say things about untimely death or, unexpected death, those are words that I avoid using because I am a believer that at the time of your birth, your death date is already determined. It's your number. Your number's already determined.
But families don't know. Families don't know that. We don't know when your number is. We just
but my belief
I don't believe
is
in numbers, just so you know.
Yeah. So my belief is that the reason we don't know, the reason that God and the universe don't share with us our death date is because we would spend more time focusing on dying than we would on living.
Yeah.
And so he does not share that with us. And so you're supposed to live every single day as if it's your last.
Yeah.
That means you're supposed to treat people a certain way.
Yeah.
Do the things that you need to do with intention, not live your life with regret. And if you live a life that way, then hopefully when your number is pulled, there is the ability to celebrate. Like, I'm not going to have a funeral. It is written in my will. And so my love asked
Wait a minute, what?
me. Yes, my love asked me, he said, do your kids know that you don't want a funeral? And I said, it is written in my will. What I want is a party. I want everybody dressed in white. I want it to be by a body of water. I want everybody line dancing and taking tequila shots, because that's how I live my life. And so I don't want people, first of all, you're not going to get a chance to look at me in no box. Let's start with that. That's not going to happen.
That's what I say.
That's not going to happen.
See me now.
Listen, listen. You know, or the people, I remember when my godmother passed back in November, and literally there were some of her church members, and she did not look like herself at all. She had been very ill, and she had been staying away from people. And there were some people with their phones down by the casket like this, taking pictures, and I was like, ma'am, snatch your phones. Like, ma'am, why do you need to take a picture of her? Like, who you getting ready to send it to? Because whoever needs to see her should be here. You know, I was highly offended by that. And so I think that people do some strange things.
Yeah.
In death and even in their own grief process. And, you know, she was very apologetic and all, but I felt like she was being messy. I was like, no, you being messy, Melinda.
Violating.
Because she does not look like herself at all. And you just want to be able to send this and show it to somebody. And so for me, that solidified the moment. I said, oh, yeah, no.
Can't do it.
And so I tell people, that's why my grandmother used to say, you give people their flowers while they're
That's
here.
right. That's right.
And so I reach out to 10 people every day by 10 p.m. Whether it's a text, sending a card, a telephone, an email, whatever it is. Every teacher that I have ever had knows the impact that they have had on my life, because I have said it to them. Every person that I meet, if you're important to me, you know it. So if my number gets pulled this evening, the folk that I love know that I love them. And so
you're not
there's
waiting
no
for them to
need.
die.
There's no
Okay, first of all,
need
your number
to
not
cry.
get pulled. I'm gonna do it like you did your daddy.
My number not
Don't even be saying that.
Number not gonna get pulled.
Your number not gonna get pulled.
My number not gonna get pulled because we got some things to do. We
That
still
is
got
that
some
part.
things
Is
to
that
do.
part. Is that
But
part.
should it be
Yeah.
pulled?
Yeah.
The point is, live your life with intention. In a way that at the end of the day, you can be proud when you go to bed at night. You can say, you know what, I today was a good day.
Dr. Adrienne, you just moved the bar by saying, you know, because if you're a person like me who try to be better, right? And when you say by end of the day, by 10 p.m., I try to call 10 people.
I call it
like
10 by
Dr.
10.
Adrienne, like, don't
10
be-
by
I need to
10.
use
What I
that.
don't need is that part to be moved.
Don't-
Like,
no.
Like no, but that's a really good thing.
But you
like,
know what
yeah,
I got
mean,
it
like
from?
it's a good thing.
So my best friend started this campaign at FAMU to raise money. Oh my God, it's probably been 9 years or so ago now, and it was called 10 by 10. And it was just getting 10 people to raise to donate $10. And so she raised all this money. And so from there, though, I started doing my own 10 by 10. So I used to do it by 10 a.m. 10 people by 10 a.m. And then my life got real busy.
yeah.
I said, oh, let me move that to 10
pull
p.m.
back.
Yeah. And so I
like
do
that.
that.
I
But
like it
really
also.
truly like
I think
that,
I'm
'cause
gonna-
that's
I think I'm
really
gonna
been intentional.
adopt
And you
that.
are an intentional person.
Yeah, I try
But
to
that's
be.
really been intentional. Like even we can just start, people can just start doing 5. Like let's just start with 5, right?
Start with 5.
Just to say, to let people know of gratitude.
Yeah, that's
and it,
it.
helps you feel better today.
It does.
That's-
So when it comes that time,
Which time?
whatever time your number is not called.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, that's your number
when your
call.
number is
That's your number
called. When your
call.
number is
I
called.
know, but
Okay.
I'm saying that you are not feeling any kind of regret.
No.
So you don't have to go to this service or have to break your neck to go to the service. I remember
Yeah,
my
no.
aunt was 105 when she passed 2 summers ago, and I talked to her as often as I could. She lived in New York. I called her. I called all my aunts.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking. I get off in the morning. Everybody else at work. I'm up for a couple hours. Let me call the aunts and see what they're doing. But I did not feel bad that I could not go to their services because I talked to them
Yeah.
every day, just about.
Yeah, I'm somebody that when it comes to death, if I am at your funeral, it means that you were really, 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 really special to me, because I always say that funerals are for the living, not the dead.
That's correct.
The dead folk don't know you there.
That's correct.
So you better do what you need to do
That's
for
correct.
them
While they're
while they
living.
are here.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
And so even I remember when my grandmother died, my father's mother. When my father's mother passed, She had started to get sick. She had started to get sick. And so my grandmother was everybody's Girl Scout leader in Tuskegee.
Wow.
And so she had been a Girl Scout leader for 54 years. So there were so many lives that she had touched. And she was the cafeteria lady at St. Joseph. And she was the crossing guard. So, I mean, like, the church was just overflowing. But when she had started to get sick, and so my mother called me. It was on a Sunday night. I'll never forget it because my family had just gotten in from Florida, like literally. And so at this point, I got 3 little kids. They were probably 8 and under. And my mother called and she said, they've said if you want to see your grandmother, you need to get to the hospital. And it was like 9 o'clock at night. And so in my head, I made the conscious decision. I said, I'm coming in the morning. I said, as soon as I drop those kids off at school, I'm going to get on the road, and I'm coming. By the time I got to the hospital, my grandmother had just passed,
Wow.
which I think is a lot of people's story. And so it was one of those situations where I felt guilty, and I felt like I should have come last night. I know I was tired. I know, and so I had to go through that whole thing with myself
That's
because
where the guilt was
nobody
coming
knew
from.
nobody knew what I was carrying because all I said to my mother is, "Okay, I'm going to leave in the morning."
So the guilt came from you not coming up
Yeah,
there.
because I did not get there to see her.
Okay.
But the reality was I was exhausted. I had just driven in from Florida. I had these little kids, and so it was a lot. And I had to make and that was the decision I made. And so I had to live with that decision. And so I think that too was a part of hearing her in my ear saying, you got to carry the family. You got to make this stuff happen. You got to, that sort of thing. But I caution people when they have those feelings of guilt, because something you said earlier, when your number is pulled, there's nothing that anybody can do to stop it. So there was nothing I could have done to prevent my grandmother's transition. I knew that. It was more of I didn't get to say goodbye. But then when I thought about it, I said, but you were who you were to your grandmama while she was here.
Exactly. And that's the important piece.
Yeah.
The important piece is that you make your mark. You show who you are to your loved ones while they are here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you won't have to, I got to go to this funeral. I've got to go to the hospital one last time. I got to do this.
Yeah.
Only thing you have to do is thank God or thank whoever you believe in, the Creator, for your presence in their life and the time that you had to spend with them. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Dr. Kai, before we wrap this conversation up, talk a little bit about the physical health implications of grief.
Yeah, so all you think about is your mind, right? You can't function, you can't move. And for me, as I talked before, that my bedroom became my safe place. I called it my prison. My therapist like, it's your safe place. And so I stayed in there, and my husband would bring me food in there, and my daughter would come home from school and she would get in the bed with me in there. And so I stayed in there. I would go from my bed to the chase. And so once I was, because my therapist told me, she said, we're going to get you over that bridge where you can just look under it and say, hey, this is grief. I can get over it. And I thought, okay, lady. But she did, right? But then once she got me over that grief with my mental, now becomes my physical, the congestion from my mental, right?
Yeah.
So now I played tennis for years. Now the tennis knee is always hurting. Like I'm feeling like I'm 80. Like, it's always hurting. My lower back is hurting. I'm just going through all of these things. My EKG is off, right? I'm going through all these things now that my mental has gone to a place of I can move on. But my body like, well, wait. But you ain't been moving.
Right.
You ain't been walking.
Right.
You haven't been playing tennis. You just been in this room. I may go downstairs every now and again, but then I feel anxiety and I'm going back, right? So I was just not moving. And so the congestion from my mental had now started to breathe, get some oxygen. But my body was like, but well, how do you think I'm gonna get some oxygen?
Right.
Not just because you're mine. And that's why I often talk about the total package of total wellness,
Yes.
right? So I just went through and still going through and still happy that I'm able to say I do yoga. I don't miss yoga on certain days because that's about being intentional about moving the congestion out of my body after the mental part, but now the physical part, so
Yeah.
it can all go together. And the doctor's saying like, hey, you're stressed, right? And so you got to learn how to maneuver through that and get to moving and get to walking because it's not easy.
Yeah.
I'm saying it now, but I literally have to be intentional that at 5:30 I'm gonna wake up. I'm going to do yoga, right? I had to be intentional about it because the yoga is going to help with my breathing, it's going to help my mental, and it's going to help stretch me out. And then I had to be intentional about, you need to go move. You need to do some squats. So I had to be really intentional about, because I didn't realize that, wow, now I've gotten through this mental, or I've gotten to a place of coping, if you will, management, if you will. And now my body is like, but what about me? Things that we just don't think about, blood pressure is acting up, the things that we don't think about, that's all a directly result of your mental not being healthy.
Right.
How long did you stay in your room before you started to move?
The only time I would really move is to go to the therapist on Friday. On Friday, it was like I was going to get out, listen to my music, and I was going to go. Probably about a year. Probably about a year.
Yeah.
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 And what we know is that grieving is a different process for everybody. It's not on a time schedule. It is not a calendared event where you can say it's going to start on this day and it's going to end on this day, because that would make us feel more comfortable, but that's just not the way that grief works. And so everybody has to go through their process for themselves. Nobody can tell you how to do it. Nobody can tell you how long it's supposed to take. That's something that everybody has to figure out for themselves. But there are certain things that as therapists, we tell people that you got to be careful. When you change up your eating habits, your sleeping habits, your will to live and do things to get outside of your house, you changing up your daily living activities, you're isolating yourself. That's when you probably need to go and have a conversation with a therapist, because you're probably stuck somewhere. And so even people who feel like they've been the best child to a parent or, to somebody that they love can get stuck, because the stuckness happens here.
Yeah, and people can actually get what's called stress-induced psychosis. So that's when they are not addressing these emotional things that happens during grief, not addressing the physical things that's going on during grief, isolating yourself, and you become psychotic.
Yeah.
And for me, the biggest thing was I'm this outgoing person, right? So the biggest thing for me is that when I did, I would try to go out to things, I went to our conventions, I did things, but people expected for me to be the person that I was.
That you had been.
That I had been. Like this outgoing person, like, hey.
Right.
But I didn't feel like, hey. And whenever somebody would say, how are you doing? I would just break down and cry. And I didn't want to present myself. So I found myself wanting to be around strangers who didn't know
and weren't
who I
going
was,
to ask,
who wasn't
how
going to
you
ask,
doing?
how you doing? And he didn't
sometimes
know who I
that's
was,
offensive.
right?
Sometimes that's offensive to people. And so one of the things that I recommend to people when they are grieving is that you have to tell people what you need and what you don't need. That's your responsibility. And so even if the response is, but I don't know what I need. But what I don't need is you calling me every day to ask me how I'm doing. That I do know. And so whatever it is, you have to be able to establish those boundaries. A lot of times in families, you've got this arguing and it's fussing and fighting over stuff, because everybody's trying to hold on to a piece of the person that has transitioned. And so it becomes, but I want this and I want that. And and it's like, wow, is this what we're really doing right now? Is this what we're doing right now? And so even with that, it's being able to take a step back and to assess for yourself, well, what are my needs? Because I already know you and I wasn't getting along anyway. And so this is probably not the time for me to engage with you, that cousin that you really don't care for and they really don't care for you back kind of thing.
One of the things that I've experienced in working in ERs, I've worked at Emory Grady Atlanta Medical Center, and people who've lost individuals who've died from gun violence or some other car accidents or some, it's difficult even as a therapist to, like, I don't know what to say. Like, initially, when they present themselves to me.
One of the things you don't say is, "I know how you feel."
Yeah.
That's
Oh, right.
one of
Oh,
the
yeah.
worst
Right.
things that
Right.
people can say
But I'm saying
because you
internalizing,
don't know
yeah,
how they feel.
as
yeah.
a therapist, and as a trained clinician, I feel like I'm an expert at my job. But just like you become at a loss at those immediate kinds of tragic situations to help to try to help somebody move forward because they are not even in a space to even realize like that their loved ones are gone right now. And
But
if
it's
it's
okay
tragic,
to say to somebody,
Yeah.
even as a therapist, I don't know how you're feeling right now. I don't know what you need right now, but I am here for you if you're able to
Yeah.
tell me what you need.
so I'm
Yeah.
I'm able to say, what do you need from me? What do you need
Yeah.
from me right now?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that a lot of times we try to fill space with words because we don't like the silence.
Yeah.
It makes people uncomfortable to have the
Yeah.
silence. But grief and loss is one of those places where sometimes silence needs to exist because it's allowing people to feel what they're feeling, because we know if you don't feel it, you can't heal from it. And what we tend to want to do is to run from it.
I used to help the social workers out doing death notifications at the hospital. And the chaplains would be in the room with the family members who had lost loved ones. And I used to always wonder, like, why are they just standing and just not saying anything right now? So they were being present. Just being present and allowing the individuals to express themselves, whether it's screaming, crying, whatever it is, cursing, whatever it is, they are allowing that person to express
yes.
whatever it is that they're expressing in that acute moment
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what recommendations do you have in terms of somebody that is dealing with grief and loss, especially as we are ending Mental Health Awareness Month, in order for them to move themselves through it?
Well, just first of all, talk to someone if you feel like you're stuck, like you can't, because everybody doesn't get stuck. Not everybody, like you said, it's an individual. It's a universal individual experience. So everybody's going to experience it, but you don't have to. Your grief doesn't look like mine. So and sometimes it's like I attribute like a wave. Waves, sometimes it's easy and sometimes tumultuous, but you have to ride the wave. You're gonna have to ride the wave, knowing that time is a great healer. Your time may not look like my time, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But don't allow anybody to push you to a point to make you feel like you're not over that yet. You still dealing with that? Yeah. But if you find yourself stuck, not eating, not moving around, not socializing, completely isolating yourself, not going to work, not taking care of yourself, then you do need to see someone.
Yeah.
Don't let it get to a point of no return where you have, like, it turns into psychosis, or you have to take antidepressants to move you forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Dr. Kai, in terms of public health, and this being Mental Health Awareness Month,
I have my green on.
you have your green on. So, if you had a magic wand and you could make a wish in terms of what could be done differently inside of public health with regards to mental health awareness, what would it be?
Is to start early. We often talk about that, but we know that behaviors are learned. And just to start early to create a healthy understanding that it's okay to talk when you're not okay,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I often say that, I often talk about my daughter. I'd say this is a conscious generation, right?
Yeah.
But definitely the magic wand for me is to start early to make people comfortable, because most of us are not comfortable from going to therapy because, where we're from, I'm from
That's right.
Mississippi, it's
That's
like, you're
right.
crazy,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
And, I always say, you don't call real crazy people crazy. That's
Right,
my whole
right.
joke. But you really just to break the cycle for us, right? Because also therapy is about trust. It's like, who do you trust?
Yeah.
Right? And so where we came from here in America is like, we trust these people around us.
Yeah.
So if you don't feel good, you go talk to the pastor. And not that that's not okay, right? But if he's not a therapist, he only has certain parameters
Right.
that he can
He is
guide you
limited.
and limited.
He is
right? He's
limited, yeah.
to what he can guide you through, except someone who. So my magic wand would be to start early and to make sure that it's in the middle schools, because that's when you really start to,
That's a
who am
difficult
I,
age,
right?
yeah.
Who am I? And start just having conversations. And it doesn't even need to be called therapy,
Yeah.
but it's just about expressing
Your
who you
feelings
are,
and
your
emotions,
feelings, and,
yeah.
and what you feel.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger thing is for adults, what we can't start early is just acknowledge what you feel.
Yeah.
And I'm literally at my age just getting to a point where I can acknowledge what I feel. And it makes other people uncomfortable because
Yeah.
it's like, well, this is not what I'm feeling. I don't want to be in this situation. I don't, I want to remove myself. So just acknowledge what you feel, because avoiding things keeps you from acknowledging that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And let me add something to what she has to say. And when you do get a therapist, treat it as a doctor. Every doctor does not have the bedside manner for you.
Absolutely.
So if you don't feel that your therapist is working for you, and I tell all of my clients this every time, I'm not just this regular person I'm not textbook, I'm not rigid in my thinking. I meet people, I'm a person. I have feelings. I might not be for you.
That's right.
So you need to find somebody that you're comfortable with.
Right.
So that this is supposed to be a sacred place, so that you can express yourself with your therapist, let them know the most intricate details of your life.
Yeah.
So if I'm not giving you that impression that you can do that, let me help you find somebody that can, because your health and safety is my concern.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So don't, this however much money I'm getting paid is not worth your life.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not gonna
Agreed.
benefit me.
Yeah.
So
It-
don't give
everybody's
up.
not ready for
Yeah.
the journey anyway.
Yeah.
So
Don't
that's
give
a whole
up.
Other
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But,
But don't give up, because
Yeah.
you need to help. Don't give
Yeah.
up. Just find another therapist,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're out there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you ladies for joining me on this conversation about grief and loss. Tell the viewers where they can find you.
You can find me at www.mamiejonestherapy.com. You can call me 404-418-2171.
Ooh, that's dangerous. She done gave out the number.
It's fine. I mean, you can purchase my books on Amazon. I have trainings that I can come out to your organization and do training on disenfranchised grief, mental health awareness, mental health in the aging population. I have a training I'm doing at Grady called It's Okay to Have a Lazy Lima Bean Day. Yeah, so I do different trainings and evaluations. That's me.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you for being
Oh,
here.
anytime you call, I'm here for you.
Yeah, okay, Dr. Kai.
Yeah, I am Dr. Kai Ayenta. I am the Rhythm Notes of Health podcast, streaming on all podcasts. We talk about everything, health and wellness for Afro-descendants, from mental health to physical health. I partner with the doctors to break down, I don't let them use a big word, and to make sure that they're understanding so people can understand and ask questions. And I also have a nonprofit called Black Pink. It's Black for the Power of Blackness and Pink for the South of Pink, where we go out into community, partner with policies and politicians and the hospitals to make sure that they're doing things to help the Afro-descendant community.
Wow.
Well, I appreciate you all so much. And
Absolutely.
hopefully this conversation will help somebody out there. If we help
Absolutely.
one
Yes,
person,
yes,
that's right.
yes,
That's what
yes.
matters. If we
Yeah.
help one person.
That's
and so
right.
I appreciate you all. Thank you for joining us for Mind Matters with Dr. Adrienne and this conversation on grief and loss, a journey for healing.
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.